my next victim is Alastair Travis of Tide, and you probably all know Tide. Come on up while I introduce you. So obviously the leading digital challenger for SME banking, which is an increasingly crowded field, but you guys are doing well. So Ali, you are leading the efforts to remove the financial admin burden of SMEs, because I believe you are VP of Business Services, which means that you do all the kind of the admin bits around. Right, yes. So it's not just what is it exactly? Kind of more like soft accounting services.
Let me explain. Yeah, we roughly split things into three at times. We have a team that thinks about payments and accounts, moving money around. We have a team that thinks about credit, lending, and then we have a team that thinks, well, this is what makes us different to the likes of Starling and some of our competitors. Thinks just around financial admin and what we call business services. So these are the kind of people who set up with Tide. They send their first invoice through Tide. They organise their expenses through Tide. Later this year, we hope they'll be running their payroll and doing their tax returns through Tide as well. So it's that area of the business.
And you cover all of sort of. I mean, what's an SME to you? How big will you go, and how small will you go?
Well, we go really up until you have a finance function. So once you have a finance function, you have very sophisticated needs. You probably need a sort of corporate banking solution. But we go from there. So we're talking your company of hairdressers, let's say with 3 stores across London, all the way down to your side gig yoga studio, two classes a week, sort of sole trader. So when you talk about that, that's about 98-99% of all businesses in the UK. So it's still quite a big segment.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what FinTech has meant for SMEs. We've obviously seen there's quite a few entrants into this market, and business banking has become kind of the new hot sector in FinTech. So how have you seen that kind of working for SMEs? Are they getting the benefits?
Well, business banking in the UK is a very strange sector. Around about 2015, there were 5 banks which had 90% market share. There was this oligopoly in place, and 4 of them had 80% market share. And I can see if you crane your neck, you'll see quite a few of the names out there. Now, it was actually the government realised that this was a sort of bad pattern, and these businesses were effectively being underserved. I would argue much more so than for retail banks, which has a similar problem. So what's happened in recent years is that you had the emergence of these digital challenges. And the biggest thing, if I'm honest, has been the ability for businesses to automatically open accounts. Something that would have taken 6 to 8 weeks became 5 minutes. And that's really what caught people's attention. And that's why we were able to capture so much market share so quickly. At the moment, 1 in 8 business current accounts that set up is with Tide. It's mainly because of that sort of shift. So.
Yeah, and how many businesses, roughly speaking, have kind of converted over to using a sort of FinTech challenger bank? I mean, of the SMEs. Is there just still a vast number who don't know about this?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'd say I would estimate in the sort of several 100,000, south of 500,000, I'd say, sort of using us and our analogs, our competitors. But you talk about a stock of 6 million businesses and a flow that are newly creating. There's not too much switching, and about half of those are comfortable using a digital-only bank, and half absolutely wouldn't consider it in a million years. So that's how we think about it.
So there's quite a lot of market left then.
Indeed, yeah. And look, if you left things to just play out as they were, in several years' time, the thing would have upended itself already because of what's already happened to the flow of new businesses.
Yeah. So when you you get people on board because it's very easy for them to open an account, but then what kind of journey do the SMEs then go through? I mean, do they change their attitude to money management or how they do things? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, so around about a third of the businesses that invoice, so we're talking kind of B2B businesses typically, do use Tide as their invoicing functionality. Around about another third use Xero, another piece of accounting software, and another third again tend to use, they download paper templates off the internet and they email them. So, it gives you just sort of a little bit of a flavour. What we do is, as I say, we go a little bit further down the value chain than some of our competitors do, and we're seeing significant pockets of our members, significant segments who are, as I say, managing their expenses, doing their invoicing and so on, but also connecting to the likes of Xero, Free Agent, QuickBooks. We're not trying to replace these guys. We recognise they're a big part of the industry. We're just trying to connect ourselves to them.
And is the typical pattern that people will start, just because they think they want a plain vanilla account, and then they find themselves drawn more and more into these services and
Yeah, that tends to be it, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
We benefit from the fact that businesses at some point absolutely do need a business bank account. You need to do all to get set up. Two people tend to create a Facebook page, create a website, get an accountant, register for a company, and set up a business bank. And they do those 5 things in a sort of random order. Okay. So we're very much part of the process of setting up an account. Okay. It's only afterwards I think people realize.
Yeah. And you obviously spend all day thinking about what small businesses need. What's their biggest productivity pain point?
Yeah, it's I was amazed in the course of doing my kind of day job to find that about 60% of Tide members, we call them our members, handle sort of physical receipts and kind of do paperwork. So we call them brown paper envelope, brown paper baggers. They do everything in the physical world. And so what we found is managing your expenses, managing your sort of keeping track of your paperwork, even if you're just sort of going to shunt it over to your accountant, is one of the big admin drains. Others are keeping track of your bookkeeping. Another one would be invoicing, in particular, chasing invoicing. So those are the things that really cause a time drain. We did a recent piece of research that suggested 30% of businesses' sort of productivity, if you're a business owner, is spent on stuff that doesn't contribute to your bottom line. So it's the kind of admin regard, the stuff you just have to do. And I think those 3 things are an important part of it.
So you're managing, obviously, if we go back to Iqbal's, 3 things that fintechs need to do: save time, save money, or make money. I mean, so clearly there's the time-saving aspect is there, but are you also finding that these small businesses are then becoming better at managing their money? So maybe they're saving money, or maybe even making money because they're chasing that invoice that otherwise they wouldn't have realised wasn't paid.
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought that was a very interesting statement by Iqbal, and I really believed it. For us, we think very hard about time. We measure how much businesses spend doing their time, and we try and get that number down.
Okay.
Now, what happens when you sort of remove that? I mean, this is time that people will be spending. Well, people do their invoices over the weekend. This is time people will be spending growing and running their business. So, yes, I think in a way you could say that.
Okay. And how much time do you have a kind of headline number that you promise people you can save them X amount of time?
I'm not sure we do actually. We certainly measure it, and as I say, 30% is one thing. Another study independently, and we benchmark it says 47 days of the business owner's year. Mm-hmm. But no, I don't think we have a nice kind of. Well, that's a great idea. Maybe I'll speak to our marketing guys.
Yeah,
maybe we need that.
All right. So where are they? So I think we've talked about where they're quite quick to adopt technology, but where are they still slow to kind of adopt digital technologies?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Because of the nature of tax, and because of these things like making tax digital just sort of emerging, these things are still very, very antiquated. So your self-assessment and your sort of corporation tax returns, this involves the sort of a dialogue with you and your accountant, you passing paperwork off to them. This sort of thing is still very, very manual. What we want to do is be in a world where your accountant, anyone who's helping you run your business, has access to the information automatically, and we think Tide can do a bit to help that.
So is that something we should watch out for as kind of the next business development?
Yeah, in fact, I'd say it is no secret. We think that in particular is something where there's relatively low complexity, and there's a role a bank can play in that.
Okay. And then what about particular sectors in the SME market? I mean, some have been quicker to adopt this than others, and who are the kind of real speedy adopters and who are the laggards?
You'd be surprised. As you might expect, we are overwhelmingly London, white-collar, sort of micro businesses, new businesses, but to less an extent than you might think. So we do have plumbers in Glasgow. We do have all these sort of businesses sort of on our books. What they would say is professional contractors is an interesting segment where you've got these the IR35s, you've got these well-paid consultants, contractors, and the like, who need a kind of they're pretty comfortable paying for someone to take all the problems off their hand, but they do operate as businesses, and these guys have been particularly underserved. HSBC almost doesn't recognise them as a segment. When HSBC talks about business banking, they talk about a firm of plumbers. They talk about sort of tradespeople and so on. They don't really think about effectively an individual who is fully employed to do a particular job. So I think those are the sorts of people we've been particularly good at attracting.
Okay. And then business banking is getting a little crowded. I mean, everyone's discovered that this is quite a sexy area, and everyone from sort of the Revoluts and Monzos to kind of new competitors coming from different markets. I mean, so how will you make sure that Tide keeps ahead and doesn't get out-competed?
Well, I think there's room for a few players. I think we'll see different players that's addressing different markets and sort of focusing on them. It's also worth noting that the government is very unlikely to allow any business, because of any bank, because of how important this is to the UK economy, to have a market share of more than about 20%. So no one's going to kind of ride in, gobble the whole thing up, and then, as much as we'd like to, no one's quite going to do that. So I think what you'll see is these digital challenges and other challenges growing in size. Yeah. I think you'll see the emergence of some slightly more sort of specific and tailored offerings. Mm-hmm. So ones that perhaps do focus on, well, the likes of Coconut and Counting Up already do focus on sole traders, let's say, but I think you will see some that focus on specific sectors or specific types of businesses. Okay. And that might be kind of, we'll have people sort of clipping on our heels in 3 years' time. Yeah.
And what about, would you ever evolve to then go further, into bigger companies? And with that?
It's an interesting question. I think the answer is no, not really. So what we saw in the market was a lot of banks that were taking a retail offering and then kind of trying to sort of shift it in place and then turn it into a business banking offering, which didn't quite work. Businesses need different sorts of support. There's actually much more money laundering, KYC risk and so on as well. And on the other end of the market, trying to drag a corporate banking offering down by cutting corners and automating things, and that not working either. So we think we've got a really good idea here, just focusing on small businesses and not just doing banking, but also doing some adjacent services. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a lot of ground, we've got plenty to do in that particular sector. I think moving up to corporate would be, or like sort of 50 employees, 200 employees would be quite tricky.
So growth won't come from going, higher up in that, it will be from the adjacent services, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think, we absolutely want to grow with businesses, and for that we need to have quite a sophisticated offering, but I don't think we need to rethink our model and repurpose it. I think we've got that would involve quite a change to our business.
And what happens at the end of the life cycle then? If you've started with someone, a small scrappy startup maybe that was 2 men and a dog, and now has become a 600 employee, organization, at that point they go with a different bank and you let them go?
Well, in a way we see that already in a small way. So you can do your bookkeeping all within Tide if you wanted. You could be categorizing everything, keeping track and downloading statements and handling things in Excel. And then you can graduate to using Xero and the likes of that, and we have absolutely no problem with you doing so. So I suppose that is inevitable as business scale. One thing I would say is one way we're thinking about this and responding to it is we have different sort of member plans and different pricing tiers. And rather than trying to price for different sorts of businesses or the size of businesses, we think, okay, what level of support do these businesses need? So we have a sort of a plus level, which is all about having a sort of phone support and sort of immediate 24/7 support for your business, and then a premium plan, which actually you have a dedicated account manager. So we do try and that becomes increasingly important as you scale up in size. Yeah. So we are doing some things to to address that.
Yeah. Okay. And final question, which is the forward-looking one. So what do you think comes next for business banking?
Gosh. I think, well, as I say earlier, I think you will see an upending of the sort of structure and market shares. Who are the big players? I think that trend will continue, and I think you'll see some new entrants into the market. I think the space between accountancy software and banks is an interesting one. And you already have people like Receipt Bank who sits somewhere in the middle, and where your accountant sort of does business, where you receive advice and so on. So seeing new players that focus on that particular journey, I think that's a kind of unexplored space.
Okay, so there's still some niches to that on that.
I would think so, yes.
All right, well, thank you very much, Ali, and we'll have you back on the panel in a moment. But save your questions for Ali for a moment. Okay.